What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the show, Recap with Mo, where we're getting ready to get into a brand new episode breakdown of BMF. But before we get into this thing, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shit snick that's going down, alright? So the episode we're getting ready to get into is for Season 3, Episode number 2, titled Magic Makers. Now, the synopsis for this episode states, Meech focuses on expanding BMF into Atlanta while Terry balances maintaining BMF and his family in Detroit. Terry looks for ways to generate revenue for BMF, and Meech comes through with a Colombian connect. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this thing, all right? So we kick this episode off with Terry and Markeisha. Now, Terry has just literally moved all of his stuff into the house, right? And Markeisha's sitting up in the bed, and she got this sad face on. And then she conveys to Terry that she believes that they need to take it a little bit slower, like we need to calm this down. He was like, hold on, I'm not really understanding. Like, what are you really trying to say to me? She was like, well, technically I'm still married to Boom. And, the reason why we were shot at and I was shot literally is because of our love and, us spending time together. Not to say that I don't want to be with you, but we just can't be together like right now, like we really want to be. And then besides that, my kids think that I was in a car accident there with my parents and all of this stuff. Whoa. So he was like, okay, space is what you want, then space is what you're going to get. She's sitting over here talking about, well, T, I didn't mean it like that. Then what in hell did you mean, Markeisha? Like, what did you expect this man to say after he's been up here by your bedside and all of this stuff, praying for you to make it through, no hurt, harm, and danger to you, and all of a sudden you tell this man, like, we need to take it slow. All right? So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to the restaurant where we see Terry coming through to check in on things. But while he's there, he and the crew see on the television on national news that their plug, Sina Hidalgo, had just been arrested and he's been transported back to the D. So he was like, dang, man, that's our plug right there. So anyhow, he tells his crew that they need to go ahead and stretch out the work that they got until they can re-up so it can last them a little bit longer until they can figure out where to go from here. So from there, we head over to the crib where we see Charles is now doing some DIY, hanging up some pictures and some other things when there's a knock on the door. So when he comes over to open it, he sees two gentlemen standing outside. One of them specifically is asking for Demetrius. The other one in the back is sitting back there real chill like, but not saying a word. So when old boy in the front is like, hey, Demetrius? He was like, oh, no, man, you got the wrong crib. But as old boy was still being persistent, he was like, hey, Demetrius, and he's looking through the house, and now he's trying to come into the house. Charles had no choice but to raise the hammer. He was like, oh, so you're not going to understand words. Maybe you'll understand this daggone hammer going upside your head. But before it got to all of that, because Charles was not playing, he was not playing, y'all. So before it got to all of that, old boy in the back, who has been calm, cool, and collective, tapped old boy on the shoulder and was like, hey, man, let's get up out of here pretty much. And as old boy was leaving, he slowly turns and Charles notices the boom boom in his back tucked in, right? So we already knew that Charles was going to actually have a conversation with his sons. We just did not know when. So anyhow, going on from there, we head down to the A where we see Meech, where he receives a phone call from Terry informing him of the plug being apprehended. So now while Terry is on the phone, his pops walks in, takes the phone from him because he tells him he's on the phone with Meech. He tells Meech, hey, bro, two amigos just came to the crib and they were looking for you specifically, mentioned you by name. Meech is like, well, what did you tell him? He was like, well, currently I didn't tell him nothing. But the next time they come knocking at my door, I'm definitely telling them your address. And then he gets off the phone, gives it back to Terry, and he was like, boy, like he really wanted to say something to him. But at this point, you're just glad that nothing went down. So going on from there, they get on the phone and they start talking their lingo. Long story short, Meech is like, look, man, we're going to figure it out, but I also need you to get up off your ass, and I need you to figure it out as well. All right? While you're up there and I'm down here, let's work together and make this thing work for all of us, right? So after he gets off the phone, we see Meech, Duffy, and Stacks at the studio/crib, right? And Meech is like, well, since Dice is gone now, we pretty much got to find new clientele, right? And it's like, well, we need some of that pure, and we don't need to play around with that. But he was like, I'm going to be real with y'all. The only one that I know down here that really got that real, that pure is Glock. So what he's suggesting is that he sets up an alliance with Glock's contact. Or in other words, pretty much saying, if he doesn't want to meet with me, then I'm going to meet with his contacts, his plugs, and I'm going to make them work for me. So, I heard what he was saying. Duffy heard what he was saying. And he was like, okay, that sounds good. But how you going to get that connection? How you going to get that connection, my boy? So anyhow, going on from there, we head back up to the D where we see Gloria and Detective Bryant. So they're discussing the whole situation with Kevin being in jail. And she's like, well, how do you plan on getting him out? How do you plan on getting our son out of jail? And as a matter of fact, how the hell did he get his hands on a gun? Detective Bryant is like, well, I definitely didn't give it to him. Maybe he watched me punching in the numbers on the safe. Whatever it may be, that's neither here or there. We just need to figure out how to get him out. And, unfortunately, lawyers cost a lot of money, but I am willing to work for it. Damn it, I will work 10 jobs if I need to get our son out of it. And she was like, yeah, we definitely need to make this right, because I never would have signed him over to you if I knew this was going to happen, if he was going to become a convict. And he was like, look, that's not going to happen. We're going to work this out. And I believe they will. Somehow, some way, it's going to work out to benefit them in some way, right? So going on from there, next we see Detective Jen and her new partner, Detective Amberson. So they sitting at her father's restaurant, who we find out very quickly that her new partner actually is pretty bright. And we find out very quickly that she speaks another language, a language that, she never conveyed to her partner that she knew. So when her father came around and he was talking and she introduces her father to her, and this is my new partner, well, she speaks back in a language that her father understands, which is Mandarin. And she was like, well, you never told me you knew how to speak that. And she was like, well, there's a lot you don't know. But technically, she learned it while she was in boarding school from some of her friends and whatnot. And, of course, her father was like, well, what happened to the other guy? Like, what happened to your previous partner? And she was like, well, Detective Bryant messed up by painting outside of the lines. But he's like, sometimes painting outside the lines, makes the picture more better. You know what I'm saying? It makes it better. It makes it more interesting. And then she sort of thought about it, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty deep right there. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But going on from there, next we head over to see Terry and Hoop meeting up with Sterling, who's picking them up. And Terry thanks him for, lending him some support during this time, of urgency right now. And Terry tells him that, hey, I've attempted to, holler at the Chaldeans, but, they're acting a little funny right now due to the whole K9 fallout or whatnot. And then Sterling tells him, hey, man, just be cool real quick. Let me go ahead and tell you what I've been up to. I pretty much reached out to this person that's out in the suburbs. Hoop is like, the suburbs? He was like, yeah, we pretty much don't have any other choices at this time, right? So anyhow, going on from there, next we see Charles and Lucille at church. She tells him after hearing the message that she's going to sign them up. And Charles is like, well, unfortunately, I'm not able to work it. Lucille is like, well, that's cool. Myself and I and Nicole, we can do it ourselves. And while we're talking about Nicole is over there talking to Breeze. Now, Breeze is fond of her, and obviously she's fond of him. And you know how them old school mamas from the church be, they see every daggone thing. So while she's over there laughing it up with Breeze and whatnot, Lucille is like, Nicole, we're getting ready to leave. Or in other words, go ahead and shut that down. Y'all ain't got nothing to talk about. And I see you over there laughing a little bit too hard. Bring your ass. So anyhow, going on from there. Next we see Terry and his crew coming into this smoked out establishment. And they're looking for the connect that Sterling has set up. from the burbs. So anyhow, when they get in there, they were talking about previously there was more to meet the eye. So we see this woman at the table that looks like a dude, but she's talking real hard and she's playing a lovely social game of poker or whatnot with these gentlemen, but they pissed off because they lose. But not only that, they losing everything to this woman. So of course he's talking real bad and all of this stuff, and unfortunately there's a gentleman at the table that's not liking his luck right now, and he has to find out the hard way, because as he's talking greasy, she's talking greasy. As a matter of fact, she's bringing up facts. She's bringing up facts about his address and about his woman, and he can't take it. Not only is he losing his money, but possibly he's losing his possibly he's losing his woman. So anyhow, going on from there, she and Terry come to an agreement on the price for, the product or whatnot. And while they're in the midst of conversating, in walks Peaches. Now, neither one of them can take their eyes off of her up until the point where Sterling comes up to inform Terry that they got eyes on the amigos. So of course they jettison, and Henrietta goes back over there to the table, to talk a little bit more to Peaches or whatnot. So from there we head back down to the A, where we head over to the Platinum Palace. And we see Greenie and Meech talking. So Greenie is trying to make sure that there isn't any bad blood between the two. But he's also attempting to tell Meech that stealing Glock's Connect isn't a wise choice either. But Meech is like, look, man, in the D, bro, we do whatever necessary to stay on top. Greenie's like, okay, that's cool. But if you didn't realize it, you're no longer in the D, you're in the A. So you need to think otherwise, if you understand what I'm saying. So from there, Meech notices a woman coming over to Greenie. Greenie conveys to her to go over to the VIP. And as she's walking away, Meech is like, damn, like, who is that? Greenie conveys to him that her name is Angel. But he was like, look, that ain't a road you want to go down. That's somebody that's going to take all of your daggone money. Like, as a matter of fact, go on and spend your money, because that benefits Greenie, right? That's what he says as he walks off. As he's leaving, we see Duffy sitting behind Meech or whatnot. So Meech goes over to the bar, and Duffy's like, man, what was he talking about? And he was like, man, bump what he's talking about. And he was like, well, how in the world are you going to get to the Connect? And Duffy's like, man, what you mean, man? Like, what you talking about? What they gonna do? P-pop for the 411? He was like, that's definitely what they're going to do. And I was like, dang, that's smart, because let's be honest, y'all. When certain men get into situations like compromising positions, sort of like being in a strip club, you're in a situation where you let your guard down or whatnot, and you start to convey some things that you typically wouldn't share. But at this moment with this woman, you're having an intimate moment. So you might share some stuff that you typically would not share if you were not intoxicated or, whatever it may be. But at this point, he's trying to figure out how to go, where to go, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a dancer that's walking by the name of Lucky. He pulls her over like, hey, baby girl, let me talk to you real quick. So she comes over. She was like, okay, what can I do for you? So he gives her a little piece of bread or whatnot. And he asked her to introduce him to Angel or whatnot, because the guy that she was talking to over there just so happens to be the right hand to Glock. So he knew in order for him to get to the Connect that he needed to find out some things from the person that spends a lot of time with either Glock or the right-hand man or somebody of the organization, right? So I was like, yeah, that's smart, man. So going on from there, we head back to the D, where we see Terry and the crew meeting up with the amigos, right? So one of the spokesmen for the amigos is like, it's Demetrius. I talked to Demetrius, right? Very broken English, but you can understand what they were trying to tell him. Terry's like, look, man, Meech is no longer here. He's not in Detroit, but I'm here, and I'm the one that you need to talk to. Loco in the back is like, look, Ty Washington likes Demetrius. That's who I want to talk to. And then that man says, look, I don't talk to Basura. In other words, I don't talk to trash. As a matter of fact, well, you the one sleeping with Boone's wife? And he was like, look, that doesn't even involve you. And listen, these people, they keep up with the business. They stay in the know. And when you do shady stuff like Terry is doing right now, that type of stuff right there, word of mouth travels real fast. So if I can't trust you to not lay down with my woman, not to, do some underhanded things across the board, then I'm gonna have an issue with talking to you. So I understand exactly where Loco is coming from. So anyhow, Terry tells him after getting pissed off because Loco doesn't want to deal with him. He tells him about Demetrius, that if you really want to go and meet with Demetrius, you need to take your tail down to Atlanta. That's where he is and whatnot. So at first I was like, okay, why is Terry doing this? And secondly, I was like, well, is this going to be a positive outcome or a negative outcome? And I was like, daggone it, I guess we'll find out soon, right? So going on from there, we head over to see LaWanda at the crib when there's a knock on the door, and it just so happens to be Terry. Now, when Terry comes in, she's like, look, Negro, why you got all these daggone security guards on my street? And of course, she's like, look, if there's something that I need to know about, a virgin matter, please let me know. Don't let me find out in the last minute, right? So, pretty much long story short, Terry is trying to get back in her good graces. We already know what it is, but she's already told this man, look, you and me, we done right now. We not together. I just need you to understand that, because he conveys to her that he's going to stay around for a few nights and whatnot until he can sort some things out, but most importantly, make sure that his family is secure. So now he's kissing her on her hands and on her shoulder, and she was like, don't even start that. And I was like, yeah, we already know what it's going to be in a couple of days or two. So anyhow, going on from there, though, we head over to the restaurant where we see Angel coming in to meet up with Meech. Now, when she sits down at the table, Meech pretty much tells her that he needs some intel. He needs a name. He needs to know who these people are. And she tells him, like, look, man, all of the stuff that I know is confidential. People tell me, stuff all the time, but I don't share it. It is what it is. But Meech is like, okay, that's cool. And she was like, well, it's not too cool because I cannot show back up to Greenie without no funds, right? I need that bread in my hand. So, of course, he gives her the money that she needs. But before she tries to jettison, he was like, hey, just chill out. You're not going to eat any food? She was like, okay, so you still willing to pay for my food even though you're not going to get any intel? He was like, no, we're good. But he already knew he had a plan in place. I like the way this ninja works, man. So anyhow, going on from there, they start to get into, good dialogue or whatnot, start to share some information about their past and their history. We found out that Angel used to be in foster homes and all of that stuff until she ran away. She got to a city and pretty much Greenie was the one that took her in and showed her the way. And I guess she's been dedicated thus far, right? But the way that Meech is talking to her, the way that he's making her feel about herself, building her up, I was like, all right, bro, I see what you're doing. And the way that she was talking to him back with respect, and she was like, look, you different. Like, I done met a whole lot of dudes, but you different, bro. Like, you real different. I was like, he got her. I said he got her, man. So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to see Detective Jen and Detective Amberson working late. So it turns out that they received an anonymous tip on an individual by the name of Curtis Jefferson, aka Cuts. Now, Cuts just so happens to be a member of the PA Boys from the west side, so they're interested to know why he was on the east side at the time of Saint's situation, right? So going on from there, we head over to the event that the church was holding, and we see Nicole is manning a table, but not only manning a table, she's manning those tampons on the table because she's now stashing a box of tampons into her purse that really didn't fit. And Lucille saw it going down a mile away, so she comes over and she was like, when did you start using these? Nicole is like, look, all the girls in my school use them. She was like, I don't give a damn. Miss Lucille is like, you start sticking them up in you, then something else going to be following it as well. I was like, hold on. hold on, where did it come from, Miss Lucille? But while she in the midst of going in on Nicole, Mr. Dr. Maurice Montclair came over and ended it all, right? Because when he came over there, she was at a loss for words, was smiling from ear to ear, couldn't stop smiling. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Nicole is looking at it as well, looking at her mama, looking at Dr. Maurice, going back to her mama just jittery all over the place. And he was like, Lucille, you still looking good, girl. So we find out real quick that Dr. Maurice has been sweet on Lucille since high school. But not only that, he's still sweet on her, and he's letting it be known right there in front of her daughter, because Lucille had to get herself together before she can introduce her daughter Nicole to... She had to get herself together, y'all. So anyhow, going on from there, we head back down to the palace, where we see Meech now meeting up with Duffy and Stacks. So after Meech meets up with Duffy and Stacks and they leave, Duffy goes off to the side with another chick. Stacks leaves the building and whatnot, and then we see and overhear a conversation going on, a disrespectful conversation at that, of a client, going off on Angel over in the VIP area. Of course, my good soldier right here, Mr. Meech himself, couldn't allow, that situation to go down over there in the booth. So he goes over there, lays hands, heavenly hands on old boy that was disrespecting Miss Angel, right? So after all of that went down, she sees him, she feels protected by him, so she goes over to him, grabs his hand, and says, "Look, let me dance for you." I was like, what the So I was like, okay, go ahead and dance for him, right? So she puts him down, she sits on his lap, and she starts to slow grind on him. But as she's slow grinding, she grabs his face like, "Look at me, I got something to tell you." She tells him about who he needs to look for, where he needs to go. And that's pretty much it of the dance, because from that point on, she gets up, walks away. Meech watches her as she walks on by. But you know who else is watching? Mr. Greenie himself, with that "what the hell's is going on" face over there at the bar. He's looking like, what's going on? And I was like, oh man, this is going to be a problem. I'm hoping it's not, but I can foresee this being a problem later on down the line. So anyhow, going on from there, next we head over to see Detective Brian going to speak to Frank, one of his old friends, about a situation. He needs an attorney, he needs fast money, so he had nowhere else to go but to Blaze to figure out, if he could assist him or whatnot. Long story short, Frank, aka Blaze, decided that he would assist him by any means necessary. Whatever he needed, he would take care of it, right? So going on from there, we head back over to the church event, where we see Nicole playing playfully with her classmate Breeze right out there on the street. Of course, Lucille is watching every daggone thing, but she is distracted by the presence of Dr. Maurice himself, all right? So he comes around. He's like, "Look, man, I've always, wanted to marry you because you were always supportive and all of this stuff." Whoa. And he gives her his business card, tells her that he would love to sit down, have lunch with her, to catch up on old times, right? And initially, Lucille is trying to stay strong. But unfortunately, the flesh is weak. And she saw that man walking by and she couldn't help herself. So anyhow, going on from there, we head back over to Blaze's crib, where we see Henrietta coming from the shadows. She tells him that, look, she's been trying to understand why her father would even try to call her to meet up or whatnot. Whoa. Blaze tells her that he's heard that she's trying to expand or whatnot. She was like, "Yeah, I was going to tell you about it, but I thought I would tell you at my own time or whatnot." So Blaze is like, "Look, let me just go ahead and say this real quick. Whatever you do out here in these streets will reflect on me as well." And of course, Henrietta's like, "Nah, man, I ain't even trying to hear all of that. I thought that you had turned over a new leaf and that you were calling me to tell me that I was going to officially take over the organization." It's like, "Oh, no. You still need to understand you working for my brand. You work for me. I did allow you to go out there and spread your wings a little bit, but understand it comes back to the brand." I was like, "Dad." She doesn't like what she hears. And by the way, I got somebody I'm going to send to you. Put them on your organization. She's sitting up there talking about, "Oh, no, I choose who I want." He was like, "He'll be there." Like, in other words, I ain't even listening to you right now. He'll be there when he gets there, and you need to put him on your payroll. I was like, daggone, man. Going on from there, we see Duffy and Meech meeting Glock's plug at this house out on the hill or whatnot. Looks like his way out. So when they get inside of the house, they see two bodies in the house that have already been hit with the boom boom. So as they getting ready to leave, Meech hears his name being called in the back. So when they come to the back, they see this man back there, the same man that came over to his dad's crib, that was asking for Demetrius, right? So when they come back there, he was like, "Are you Santiago?" And he was like, "Oh no, Santiago not here. He not here." All right. So he was like, "Well, I'm supposed to meet him here." He was like, "You Demetri?" He was like, "Yeah, I'm Demetri, but yeah, I'm supposed to meet this guy here or whatnot." And then while they in the midst of talking, all these shots are going on outside. So Duffy's looking out the window. He was like, "Oh man, like it's the Colombians versus the MKs." So the two individuals that's already in the house are the MKs, and then the people that's pulling up are the MKs, and all of them are gone now. They came. It leads to this situation, right? They not there from what we can tell. So anyhow, they pretty much make a deal from there. He tells them like, "Look, I came down here for you specifically because, Cena says you were a good dude and I only wanted to work with you." And he was like, "Well, how did y'all find out that I was down here?" They was like, "Terry told us you were down here. So we made a trip down here to make that work." I was like, "Dad, go." So he was like, "So y'all came all the way down here to work with little old me?" He was like, "Yeah, we did. Because we're family, right?" And since we're talking about family, let's go ahead and talk about this situation right here real quick. So Meech calls Terry to pretty much inform him that everything is good. We already got a new plug. Everything is good. Don't worry about nothing. We're going to work this stuff out, long story short. So going on from there, next we see back up in the D, we see where Terry and the crew are discussing the whole deal with Henrietta. They talking about how the stuff has been stepped on. It's not a great product. And we're paying $28,000 for, whatever the cost is for the brick or whatever they're getting. And it's just freaking unbelievable, right? So anyhow, after having a conversation with Meech, Terry couldn't even imagine, making this deal work with Henrietta with all this stuff being stepped on and with the price and whatnot. So, Sterling is like, "Okay, I just told you who she was, who her father was. He was an ex-cop. He's an original gangster, an OG, as we like to say. Like, what you gonna do? Because he's very well connected as well." And he was like, "I really don't know." Which brings us to this part of the episode where we see them meeting up at her office or whatnot. Terry's like, "Look, man, well, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline." Old boy that's in the office with Henrietta is like, "Hold on, wait a minute, y'all had a deal." He was like, "Well, as you already know, the deal isn't completed. Technically, it's not. And, pretty much, it is what it is at this point." And she was like, "No, I know that the tides are about to change right now." He was like, "You're right. People are about to be buying from BMF." And as they were walking out of that door, man, you could feel the heat coming off the television, man, with Henrietta staring old boy down, man. And old boy that was with her couldn't believe it as well. So I guess they thought they were getting paid today, but unfortunately it just didn't go down that way. So I felt sad for her because earlier in the day, her father just pretty much told her, like, "You second fiddle to me. Like, this is still my organization, and now you got this deal that you thought was coming through, but it fell through, and they telling you that they about to be the main people on the block, and everybody gonna be buying from them. Like, how should you feel in this situation, Henrietta? I already know. I'm gonna be staring like that as well, letting that heat come off the television like that." So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to the crib where we see Lucille is standing in the hallway, nervous as hell, right? And she slowly decides to walk into Nicole's room. And then she was like, "Look, Nicole, I just want to have a conversation. Like, I've been noticing the way you were around, Breeze or whatnot," but she didn't call him by his name. She just says that boy that you were around and all of this stuff, whoop, whoop, whoop. And while she's talking, Nicole is like, "All right, Mom, are we getting ready to have the talk?" And of course, her mother really doesn't want to get into all of that. She's just trying to convey to her, what potentially could happen, whoop, 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 because when you're in love and all of this good stuff. So Nicole is like, "Okay. So can I say something real quick? Because I saw the way that Dr. Montclair was looking at you, and that was exactly the same way that Breeze was looking at me. And before you know it, Miss Lucille was out the door. She didn't want she didn't want to have that conversation. Nicole threw it back at her, and she wasn't ready for it, all right? She didn't want to have the talk. So anyhow, going on from there, we see Henrietta and Peaches. She pretty much booms her, tells her that she needed some of that pure work, and unfortunately her connect wasn't good enough, so she got rid of her, and the cleaning crew came in to clean up the mess or whatnot. So while we're talking about the mess, we see Detective Jen and Detective Emerson outside casing the house, and they're waiting out on Cuts to show up, right? So he eventually shows up, getting in this vehicle, and drives over to the restaurant where we see Terry, we see LaWanda and all the rest of the crew, right, at the restaurant, and he's there trying to get a plate of food or whatnot. So going on from there, we head back over to the family crib where we see Miss Lucille sitting in the mirror, smiling, rubbing her face and her neck and shit. I was like, hold on, wait a minute. I said, you do know you fornicating, right? If you're thinking about that man in your dreams and your thoughts, you've already fornicated. You've already done what Charles was doing. So you So I was like, you might as well let that brother back into the bedroom, because y'all both did the same thing. He just did it physically. You're doing it mentally. Y'all all the same. Anyhow, going on from there, though, we head back down to the A, where we head over to the palace, where we see Loco has joined in on the festivities. We see Meech, who brings in Stacks, and he introduces Loco to him. Of course, Stacks got his hands up in the air like he's trying to, give him a high five or whatnot. Loco ain't going for it, because obviously he's seeing something that we're seeing as well. He really doesn't trust a lot of people, and I'm glad that he doesn't at this point in time, right? So anyhow, Duffy is like, look, man, I think Angel was the one that set all of this up with the MKs. And of course, Meech is like, well, you don't know if she did or if she didn't. We really don't know right now, but I guess we'll find out. But since we're talking about the headliners for the night, why aren't they out there on the stage? That's what Duffy and everybody wants to know. But since we're talking about the ownership, let's talk about Greenie, because Greenie is responsible for who's headlining, who's out there for the night, right? So he comes over to talk to Meech and tells him like, hey, man, good thing last night. I just want to say drinks are on the house, man. Whatever you guys want, don't worry about it. Your whole crew is taken care of. And of course, Meech is like, man, what for? He was like, look, man, the way that you handled the situation last night, protecting my lady, my girls and whatnot. And I just want to show you an act of gratitude, just to let you know that I really, really appreciate that or whatnot. So as he's walking off, Meech is like, man, you little slimy, whatever he said or whatnot, because he still technically does not trust Greenie, right? So going on from there, we head to a house where we see Loco and Meech coming in. It looks like it's the very next day, and they both are tore from the floor up. They can't even stand up, right? So they walking in. Meech is like, look, man, you take the couch, I take the floor. I'm good. I grew up poor. I'm good with it, man. And Loco is like, look, man, I came across on a raft. Like, we grew up poor as well, so I'm very appreciative of what I have now. So I'm not too good to sleep on the daggone floor. You know what? I can take that, man. I get that all day, man. But going on from there, pretty much they say they are family. They're going to support one another. They're going to ride together, and they're going to ride this till the wheels fall off. That's pretty much the end of this episode. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this recap and review. It was a little bit long, but I had to get into all the nooks and the crevices, right? Y'all know how I do on this platform. Make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shit that's going down. I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.